For this version of the classic side part, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the hair pretty tight around the sides and in the back. We're going to leave the top longer so we can push it up in front with paste and style the top kind of up high and back. And so what I'm going to do on top is want to leave it a little bit longer in the front. It's not too long, but it's really thick, so we're going to go through and we're going to put a lot of texture into it so it'll stand up because his hair is very straight and it grows straight forward. So we're going to have to take a lot of that thickness out so we can get the hair to stand up. We're going to taper it pretty tight around the edges. This gentleman, he has the type of hair that it's either long enough where it lays down or we got to cut it short enough below the point where it's going to stick out. And then as we go around the back, I always like to check, hairlines. He does have kind of a wild hairline, so again, it's either got to be long enough so it lays straight, or we got to taper it in closer so it doesn't grow in all different directions and grow to that point. His cowlick isn't too bad. That's not going to cause any problems. And then the other thing I like to check too is, hairlines around the ears. He has a pretty thick hairline around his ears. It does start a little higher around the edges, so we have to be a little careful that we don't wind up with a big white wall around the ears. And then when we get to the end, we'll check with the client on the sideburn preference if he wants to leave them longer or shorter. So the first thing that we'll have to do is dampen the hair down, and then we're going to start on the top, removing that bulk and that thickness, and we're going to work our way down. We're going to start out on the top section. I'm going to over direct the hair straight up to 90 degrees, and I'm going to be using my 40 to 44 tooth thinning or blending shear. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start halfway down on the shaft of the hair and close the scissor. I'm going to pull my fingers up, close it again, and pull my fingers up again and close it a few more times to take length. So I'll show you again. Halfway down, quarter of the way down, and then just at the very end to remove the length. So what this is going to do is I'm cutting very little length, but I'm texturizing and taking the thickness out of the hair at the same time. This client's hair is very thick. It grows straight forward, so to get it to do something that doesn't want to do, we got to take a lot of that heaviness out so it'll go back and stay back. So I get my center guide first. I'm going to comb the hair back down and work on the right side. Same thing, I'm going to over direct the hair back till I see my middle guide, my center guide. Now this is a square shaped haircut, and what I mean by square shape, I want to keep the weight in the corners. So when I'm working on the top, my fingers are always parallel to the floor. So these thinning or blending shears are an excellent tool when they're used properly. Now I'm going to take one more section, make sure my fingers are parallel to the floor. If there's nothing there to cut, I don't have to cut anything. Okay, now we're going to work on the opposite side off the center. Again, I can see my center guide. So I always have two guides. I have my center guide and my previous guide underneath. So that way you never get lost on a haircut. Okay, and then where the part is, we're going to take one more section. And we see some heavy spots here. So we're just going to, again, take very small sections. The smaller the sections you take, the more even and more accurate the haircut's going to be. And then as we comb the hair down, you can see how it's kind of going forward and to the side. I'm going to go through the front section here and take a little of the thickness out of the bangs. And just comb it all the way across. Now I never like to comb the bangs straight down and cut a straight line across. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit in the center there, take a little bit of the length. So this way if the hair is dry, it's never going to look like we put a bowl on his head. If he doesn't have any product in it and it goes straight down, it won't look like we put a bowl on his head. Okay, and that completes the top section. Now we're going to work on the round of the head section. So that is the area from the comb to the scissors right here. So we're going to pull the hair out, and I'm still using the thinning shears because I want to remove a lot of the thickness and cut length at the same time. So again, I'm starting halfway down on the shaft of the hair and slowly pulling the hair away from the head. So as I'm cutting, I go from just thinning out and texturizing to cutting length at the very end. And then a good way to do this, or an easy way to do this, if you look very closely at my pinky, as I start pushing with my pinky, it pulls these fingers out very slowly, and that's how we control the speed and the amount of thickness and length that we take. So the slower I move my fingers, the more thickness and length I take. The faster I move, the less thickness and length I'll take. So what I'm doing here by cutting the round of the head section is I'm creating myself a guide when I go in and do my clipper work. Okay, so now when you rough the hair up here, you can see that guide right there, and that's what we're going to blend to. So now I'm going to go back to the center. I'm going to work in the opposite direction. The only spot I have to be careful of is right here where the crown is. So where the crown is, I'm just going to angle my fingers. And then I'm keeping my fingers parallel to the side of the head, so that way we keep the square shape. We'll keep the weight in the corners. So I'm starting halfway down and very slowly pulling my fingers out, so we're thinning, texturizing, and cutting length all at the same time. Again, the square-shaped haircut, we'll have to make sure I leave this weight in the corner so that we don't lose our part. So even though we're going to go short on the sides and we're going to do more of a modern style, I still want to leave it so we have that weight in the corner so we don't lose that part. And then if you have trouble picking it up towards the front, if it's a little shorter, you can pick it up over your comb and do the same thing. Hold your comb parallel to the side of the head. Okay, and that completes the round of the head section, and when we rough it up there, you can see our guide there where we're going to blend to. For the bulk of the haircut, the sides and the back and the semi-finished section, I'm going to use the clipper over comb technique. I'm going to use my detachable blade clipper because we're working with a lot of thick hair, and I'm going to use my #1 blade, which is equivalent to your adjustable clipper in the open position. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to remove the bulk on this side. I don't want my taper to be higher or my fade to be higher than where the bangs are because it's going to be out of balance. But as I work my way around to the other side, it's okay to go a little higher because the more disconnected side part styles are popular now. So it's okay to be a little higher on one side than the other with the style. So I'll show you what I mean. The first thing I want to do is comb the bangs out of the way so we're not in danger of cutting the bangs. So we're just going to comb those right out of the way. We're going to turn our clipper on and snap our blade in place. I'm using a large flat top comb so I can control a lot of hair. And I'm using a light color comb so we can see the hair. If I use a dark color comb, it would be difficult to see the hair. So I want to take an imaginary line straight up in the air until I run out of hair, and that's going to leave it blended. So now we're not going to have that awkward, heavy area there where we're going to have to blend it in. The blend is the most difficult part of the haircut that people struggle with. So if I can take that part out of the haircut, it's going to be much easier. So now here in front, I just want to blend those bangs in to our taper. So there we go. And we're going to get as much as we can with the large comb, and then we'll be going back with our smaller tools afterwards. So we're going to follow the contour of the head shape and dip the comb down a little bit in the back. And again, we're going to take an imaginary line straight up in the air with the comb until we run out of hair. That way we're not going to have a heavy weight line or a heavy ridge that we're going to have to blend. Now as we work our way towards the back, it's okay to bend the head down a little bit. Now you can see the advantage of using a larger comb. You can control a lot more hair. And then at the very bottom, we're going to bevel that comb out and begin our taper or our semi-finish. Now I can always see my previous guide in the comb. It's a very good idea that you have one of these clippers handy, the detachable blade clipper, because you can see how easily it goes through all this hair. Whereas most adjustable clippers are going to really fight and struggle to go through this much hair. So basically we're just focusing on one panel at a time, so you can always see your previous guide. You're not jumping around from spot to spot. And then we're at the bottom, we'll start our semi-finish. Now the other thing I'm doing too to make it easier and more comfortable on my posture is I'm using an underhand grip. My hand is under the clipper instead of an overhand grip where my hand is over the clipper and then my elbow and shoulder are going to have to be way up in the air, causing a lot of fatigue. So underhand grip is a powerful tool. So we're sticking with one panel at a time. The big comb serves as a clipper guard. Doesn't allow us to cut the hair too close. And a trick I learned along the way is as I'm working my way up the side of the head, if I angle the comb inward like this, it picks the hair up, versus angling the comb out, it just pushes the hair and I lose my grip on the hair. We'll start the semi-finish a little bit at the bottom. Now the part sides are tricky. You want to leave it just long enough where it lays down, but not so long that it looks like we put a bow on the client's head. And then we come from the front of the ear, thin out those sideburns. Again, as we said before, you don't really want the taper higher than the bangs, so comb those bangs down and use those as a guide. So everything blends in and fits in naturally. Okay, so that completes the sides and the back and removing all the bulk. Now we're going to move on to the semi-finish, which is a 2-finger width around the edges, and put a nice taper on this haircut. Now I'm going to be using my adjustable clipper. An adjustable clipper is one that has a lever on the side where you open the lever all the way and it makes the clipper blade longer, leaving the hair longer, or you can close it down all the way using a closer cut where you can actually use to line off the sideburns if you want. And then you have a few different lengths in between, which really assists you, especially when we get to the back of the hairline, to work out the taper or the natural hairline on the neck. So we're going to start out with a finishing comb. I like to use a nice flat smooth finishing comb. We're going to use it just like we would a clipper guide. So we're going to get in there and use it to pull the hair out. And then we're going to pull the ear down and start to fade that hair out. Have the clipper blade all the way in the open position. As I said, these hairlines are a little bit trickier because when you pull the ear down, you can see it has a little bit of a space in between, so we don't want to taper it too close so we wind up with a big arcing white wall around the outline of the haircut. Okay, now we're going to work behind the ear a little bit. Use the comb to hold the ear down. And we pull the ear down and we want to put a 45-degree bevel on that taper around the outline. Now here's where the tricky part comes in. As you can see on the back of the neck, it's all growing towards the center and he has a tail. So that's where it comes in handy to have one of these finishing combs that really bend and move. So we're going to get right in there and taper that out. So we're going to taper it out all the way across, and then we'll go in with the open blade and finish it up. So we'll leave the clipper in the open position and start to scoop out that tail. And then in the corner we can pull it straight down. Okay, then we're going to close the clipper halfway in between and not go up as high. Okay, and then when we go back to clipper over comb, open your lever back up to put it in the longest position. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Really get that comb in there and dig that hair out. And if you have to spin it around and use the smaller teeth to get a better grip on the hair, you can turn the clipper or turn the comb around. Okay, and then we're going to rotate that comb from the side and just kind of rotate it around so we can taper out this corner. So just rotate it like that. We're going to start to taper out this outline here. Close the clipper blade halfway. Then close it down all the way. And now we're going to work our way around the ear. And same thing here, just rotate your comb. Now as we're cleaning up around the ear again, we have a high hairline around the ear here also, so you want to keep the comb over the ear to protect the ear and leave the hair just a little bit fuller right there. And then we're going to pull the ear down and we're going to get it that way. If we hold the ear down and try to taper it too close, we're going to cut a big hole around the ear. Okay, then we'll taper out the sideburns a little bit more. All right, and as we finish up with the adjustable clipper, we're going to take our trimmer and we're going to edge off the sideburns. I'm going to turn the clipper around and shave up. You want to make sure your client's chin is parallel to the floor so the sideburns come out nice and straight. We're going to pull that ear down, and if we see any little bit of stubble, we're going to grab that. Now as we come around the back, we want to leave a nice natural hairline. So we're going to clean that up behind the ear. And since the hair is growing towards the center, it's going to be very hard to make an outline this way. So we'll try what we can, and then we'll turn the clipper around and we'll shave to it. And then since we already tapered the neckline, we're going to bend the head down, and we're just going to clean up the fuzz on the back of the neck, not getting too close to our taper. So then we're going to work our way all the way across and work our way back around to the right side. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. We want to leave a nice distinct line in the corner here. We're going to pull the ear down. You can see how there's some hair growing right on the back of the ear. We want to get that, but not go too high. Blend in the sideburn. Make sure the chin is parallel to the floor and line off the opposite sideburn area. Okay, and now the outline is complete, and we're just going to do some final texturizing around the crown area before we style the hair. The final step before we style the hair is this area right here, the circular area. I want to make sure that we take a little bit more weight out of there so it doesn't look like we put a bowl on his head. The length is good and it all blends, but we have to take some of the thickness out. So I'm going to go through on a diagonal and just close the scissor halfway. This is my 40 to 44 tooth blending shear. I'm going to move the comb real slow. I'm going halfway down on the shaft of the hair and only closing the scissor halfway. So then when you comb it back, you can see how that takes all the heaviness out. And then this, I'm going to slightly round it into the top. I'm going to come back and do the other side. Now I'm going to comb the hair forward, and I'm going to do it against the way it grows. Okay, and then we have to do just a little bit more on the top. So since the hair is growing from left to right, what I want to do is I want to start on the right hand side, and then I'm going to come from the right hand side and work my way to the left, doing the same thing. Closing the scissor halfway, taking a little bit more of that thickness out. So as I said in the beginning of the haircut, we want to keep the length, but we want to remove this thickness so the hair will stay back. We're asking it to do something that it doesn't want to do naturally. Very small sections. That means move the comb slow and only close the scissor halfway. So now you can see a big difference in the hair. It's a lot without the hair being too stringy. If I pull the hair up straight, you can see how it's still even, how even it is, but how we went through and thinned out and texturized the hair. So whichever way you pick it up, it's going to be even. Okay, now with that done, the hair is ready for the style. Okay, now we're ready for the style. So what I'm going to use, you can see already when we first started cutting his hair, it was just laying straight forward. Now without even any product in it, it's staying to the side and back. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a good amount of a heavy grooming cream. And what I first want to do is get it on the top, push it forward in the direction it grows. And then we're going to get underneath into the roots and push it back. And for this particular style, we're going to, even though it's going to be more of a classic side part, we're going to just kind of go forward into the side without a definite distinct part. So we're going to get that product in there good. And then I'm going to get a wide tooth comb and comb it through. So we'll comb the product through really good, and then after we comb it through, we can still mess it up again with our fingers, but we just want to get that product in there really good. Okay, and then at the very end, you can just take your fingers and go through that and mess it up just a little bit so it doesn't look so perfect. Okay, and then we'll give you a quick 360 view on how it looks with the tapered sides and the tapered back. We tapered the tail right out of there.